Welcome to our channel, where the smallest moments in life can completely change a destiny. Today, we dive into an emotional and unexpected journey titled Single Dad Missed His Flight, but His Seatmate Changed His Life Forever. A single dad thought missing his flight was just another headache. But that very delay opened the door to something extraordinary. A fateful encounter with the stranger sitting next to him, someone who would transform his future forever. In this story, you'll find everyday details turned dramatic. Moments that are both funny and heart-touching, and turning points that will make you say, life really does have its reasons. Stay with us to the end to discover what miracle awaited this single dad and why missing that flight became the best chance of his life. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of the inspiring, surprising, and unforgettable stories we bring you every day. That morning, the sky was gray, heavy with clouds, as if foreshadowing a day that wouldn't go smoothly. Min, a single dad in his early 30s, lean but quick, with eyes that always carried the weight of sleepless nights, was rushing through the terminal. In one hand, he dragged a squeaky suitcase. In the other, he held tightly to the small palm of his daughter, Anna, just 6 years old. He hurried but forced himself to keep a smile. For a man who had grown used to enduring hardship, the thing he feared most wasn't missing a meeting or a flight. It was letting his daughter see him fail. "Daddy, will the plane wait for us?" Anna asked innocently, worry painted across her little face. Min chuckled weakly. "Yeah. If the plane knows how important we are, maybe it'll wait." Half joke, half truth, masking the struggles he carried like armor. The airport scene looked like a comedy sketch. Min sprinting, his shirt half-buttoned wrong, suitcase clattering behind him, while Anna stubbornly clutched her oversized teddy bear, the one she insisted she couldn't travel without. People stared, probably thinking, here's the perfect picture of a single dad hanging on by a thread. At the check-in counter, the airline agent's voice cut like ice. "I'm sorry, boarding has closed." "You and your child cannot board this flight." Min froze. His heart pounded, ears buzzed. All his careful plans, the important meeting across the city, his one shot at a new beginning, crumbled in an instant. Anna's eyes welled up as she whispered, "Daddy." Did we get left behind? Such a simple question, yet it sliced him open. He wanted to curse the old alarm clock, the traffic, the whole world, but he swallowed it, forced a smile, and stroked her hair. Maybe God just wants to test us today, and sometimes destiny hides in the form of failure. Min had no idea that this delay, this so-called disaster, was really the doorway to fate itself. Because on the next flight, he'd meet the seatmate who would change his life forever. After realizing they had missed the flight, Min slumped onto one of the waiting chairs in the terminal. It felt like the entire world had turned its back on him. The loudspeaker blared nonstop, announcing departures one after another while waves of passengers hurried past. Each announcement seemed to mock his helplessness. Anna, however, was different. She hugged her teddy bear tightly, swinging her little legs, and every now and then glanced at her dad. "It's okay, Daddy, we can take another plane," she said softly. That innocent remark, like a cool breeze cutting through the heat, made Min smile bitterly even as his throat tightened. His daughter had no idea he had just missed a chance that could have changed their lives. While Min was debating whether to call his business contact to apologize, a middle-aged couple a few seats away looked at him with pity. The woman whispered to her husband loud enough for Min to hear, "Poor man. Must be a single dad." Min heard it but only forced a smile. Pity? He was used to those looks. People either thought he was to be pitied or that he was irresponsible. Few ever saw the sleepless nights he spent working while rocking his daughter back to sleep. Before he could drown in his thoughts, his phone rang. It was his former boss, the one person Min had hoped would help him return to the career he loved. Hesitant, he picked up. The voice on the other end was cold. "Min, since you didn't show up on time, don't bother coming. Someone else has taken your spot." The words hit him like a hammer. Min sat frozen, his hand trembling around the phone. This wasn't just a job. It was proof that a single dad could rebuild his life. Anna tugged gently at his sleeve. "Don't be sad, Daddy. Maybe the next flight will be better." Min looked at her. And for the first time that gray morning, he laughed, a laugh that was part bitter irony, part heartbreak, and part fragile hope. He didn't know it yet, but that next flight, the one his daughter mentioned, would lead them to the seatmate who would change their lives forever. An hour passed as Min and Anna waited quietly for the next flight. The airport grew busier, filled with the chaos of boarding calls, rolling suitcases, and crying children. Min sat slouched, lost in a storm of negative thoughts. I've failed. Again. How am I supposed to take care of her now? He pictured unpaid bills piling up, the small apartment lease about to expire, and the judgmental stares of relatives every time they reminded him he wasn't settled. Anna, on the other hand, was still cheerful. She poked her teddy bear's belly and whispered, "Daddy, I think Mr. Bear believes this new flight will bring us surprises." Min chuckled. Children always saw the world in such simple ways, but maybe that simplicity was exactly what kept grown-ups from collapsing. When boarding finally began, Min and Anna climbed the jet bridge. His heart was heavy, but he told himself, "Fine, let's treat this as a fresh start. I have nothing left to lose." They found their seats, a window seat for Anna, Min beside her, and an empty seat in between. Min didn't think much of it. Someone would fill it soon enough. He busied himself buckling Anna's seatbelt and pulling a milk box from her bag, still half absorbed in his worries about money and life. He had no idea that in just a few minutes, that empty seat would no longer be empty, and the person who claimed it would become the turning point of his life. The plane rumbled as the captain signaled departure. Min held his daughter's hand, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. One thought echoed in his mind. Maybe fate still has something left for me. Footsteps echoed down the aisle. Min looked up and saw a figure rushing toward their row, breathing quickly as if she had just run a race. It was a woman, early 30s, with softly curled hair and delicate features touched with urgency. In her hand was a sleek leather briefcase, her presence radiating both professionalism and quiet confidence. She smiled apologetically as she passed other passengers. Then fate sealed its move. She stopped right at Min's row. "Excuse me, this is my seat." Her voice was warm, gentle, yet firm enough to make Min pause for a heartbeat. He quickly gathered their things, shifting aside to let her sit between him and Anna. Anna's curiosity sparked instantly. She leaned closer to Min and whispered, "Daddy, she's really pretty." Min gave a nervous chuckle, signaling for her to be polite. But inside, he had to admit, there was something different about this woman's presence. The plane began to taxi. The woman opened her laptop, scanning through files with focused determination. Min sat quietly, hand on Anna's milk box torn by a flood of thoughts. What would someone like her think of me? A single dad who missed his flight and looks like a failure. And then Anna, in her innocent way, broke the silence. She looked up with sparkling eyes and asked, "Do you like teddy bears, miss?" The woman paused, then smiled warmly. "Yes, I do. Very much." That simple reply melted the stiffness in the air. Min glanced at his daughter, then at the stranger beside him. He had no idea that this tiny exchange marked the beginning of something far greater. His new seatmate, the woman fate had placed beside him, wouldn't just change this flight. She would change the lives of both father and daughter forever. The plane soared into the sky, engines roaring like a heavy soundtrack to the emotions suspended in midair. Min leaned back, eyes shut, hoping to forget the disaster of the morning. But the woman sitting beside him made that impossible. She wasn't like the usual passengers. Her posture was poised, her gaze locked on her laptop, fingers dancing over the keyboard as if every keystroke could shift $1 million deal. One glance told Min she belonged to the world of business or finance, the very world he had once entered, only to be thrown out mercilessly. Anna, of course, had no sense of boundaries. She leaned toward the laptop, eyes sparkling like she had just discovered treasure. "What are you doing, miss?" Her small voice cut through the quiet cabin. Embarrassed, Min pulled her back quickly, stammering, "Anna, don't bother." The woman chuckled softly, a smile lighting up her face. "It's all right," she said warmly, turning the screen slightly so Anna could peek. I'm preparing a presentation for a big project. Very important. Anna tilted her head, serious as an adult. Is it fun? That innocent question made both Min and the woman laugh. Min couldn't remember the last time someone had smiled at something his daughter said. Then she looked up at him, her eyes steady but kind. Are you traveling for work? Min hesitated, then forced a small smile. Something like that. I missed an important chance this morning. He didn't explain further, yet somehow meeting that gaze, both determined and gentle, he felt like he could share more. And in that fleeting moment, Min realized maybe fate really had placed the right person beside him. The woman gently closed her laptop as if deciding to pause work for a while. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and turned to Min. I'm Lisa, and you are. Min hesitated, caught off guard before replying. I'm Min, and this is my daughter, Anna. Hello, Anna, Lisa said warmly, leaning slightly closer. I love your teddy bear. Anna beamed, hugging the bear tightly against her chest as if showing off her greatest treasure. The air between them softened. Min felt his shoulders relax, his breath slower. Still a trace of insecurity lingered. He murmured awkwardly, I'm sorry if she bothers you. Kids can be noisy. Lisa shook her head with a gentle smile. Not at all. In fact, I feel lucky to sit beside you two. Airports are cold, planes are noisy, but having Anna here makes the trip feel less dull. Simple words, yet for Min, they were like medicine. He was used to pitying glances or whispered judgments. To hear someone honestly say they felt lucky to sit with him, it warmed his heart. The two began to talk. Lisa shared that she was an investment consultant, fresh off a major deal, now flying to attend an important conference. Min, at first intending to keep it vague, slowly let more slip. About life as a single dad. About the chances he had to walk away from because he couldn't leave his daughter behind. About the chaotic morning he'd just endured. Lisa listened, truly listened. No interruptions, no pity, only the occasional nod or smile. In that moment, Min realized how long it had been since someone had given him the gift of simply being heard. Their conversation began to flow naturally, as if they weren't strangers thrown together on a flight. Lisa asked gently, What field did you work in before? Min hesitated, a flicker of regret in his eyes. Finance, but things didn't go as planned. After my wife left, I had to put my daughter first. That meant walking away from a lot of chances. Lisa's gaze held no judgment, only empathy. You know, she said softly, I've met many people in this field, but few are brave enough to put family above career. You may think you lost, but honestly, that's a strength most people don't have. Her words stunned Min. No one had ever said that to him before. Usually people saw him as a failure, a clumsy single dad. But Lisa seemed to see something else. And of course, Anna wasn't about to let the grown-ups stay serious for too long. She blurted out, Miss Lisa, my dad is amazing. He makes star-shaped pancakes, and his bedtime stories always help me sleep. Min flushed, ready to hush her. But Lisa laughed, her smile brighter than the cabin lights. Really? Then Mr. Min isn't just a good father. He's an artist in his daughter's eyes. At that moment, Min felt something unfamiliar stir inside him. A sense of recognition, a fragile connection, and a spark of hope. The flight he thought marked the start of another failure was slowly turning into a gift of destiny. The plane leveled off, cabin lights dimmed, and passengers settled into quiet. But Min's heart beat faster, not from worry, but from the unexpected depth of his conversation with Lisa. She closed her laptop fully and leaned slightly toward him, her voice lower, almost confidential. Min, you clearly have strong experience in finance and such a grounded perspective. Have you ever thought about returning to the field? The question caught him off guard. He chuckled nervously. Me? I don't think I have a chance anymore. That industry? It feels like a door locked shut. Lisa's gaze didn't waver. It was sharp yet sincere. I don't believe that. Sometimes doors close only to lead us to the right one. And who knows? She paused, smiling faintly, almost mysteriously. Maybe I'm sitting next to someone I was meant to meet on this flight. Min froze. For a brief moment, he didn't hear the engines, the cabin noise, nothing. Only her words echoing. Someone I was meant to meet, Anna yawned and rested her head on his shoulder, the picture of innocence. The scene turned unexpectedly tender. Lisa's eyes softened as she watched them. She said no more, just smiled as if holding back a secret. Min felt curiosity and a strange hope stirring within him. For the first time in months, the future didn't look like a wall. This flight, and the woman beside him, might be the beginning of a journey he never dared to dream of. The plane had settled into its calm rhythm. Passengers flipped through magazines or dozed with headphones on, bathed in the soft golden glow of cabin lights. Min glanced over and noticed Lisa wasn't working anymore. She leaned back, eyes distant, as if lost in thought. After a pause, Lisa turned to him with a faint smile. "Do you want to know the real reason I had to be on this flight?" Min blinked, surprised. "I'd guess. An important meeting?" She let out a short laugh, tinged with self-mockery. "Yes, an important meeting. But not just to present a project. I'm on my way to face a group of major investors. The truth is, they don't trust women in this field. And this meeting, it's my last chance to prove I'm not just a token female consultant they hired for appearances." Min froze for a moment. Her words resonated too deeply. He looked at her and saw not only strength in her eyes, but also exhaustion. An exhaustion that mirrored his own, the kind that comes from constantly having to prove your worth. He nodded slowly. "I know that feeling. I was pushed aside too, not because of skill, but because they didn't think a single dad like me was stable enough for the role." Lisa looked at him, surprised, and then both of them laughed, not out of joy, but at the bitter irony of it all. Yet in that laughter, something sparked, a strange kinship, as if they had finally found an ally up in the endless sky. Just then, Anna stirred, rubbing her eyes. "You two talk too much." "I can't sleep," she mumbled. Her innocent protest made them both burst into genuine laughter. The tension melted away, replaced with warmth and closeness, as though they had known each other far longer than a single flight. After Anna's innocent interruption broke the tension, the space between Min and Lisa grew strangely intimate. They no longer felt like strangers, but like two souls scarred by struggle, finding each other in a moment of fate. Lisa rested her elbow on the armrest, leaning slightly toward Min. Her voice softened, tinged with weariness. "You know, sometimes I feel utterly drained. I have to work twice as hard just to be recognized for half of what men achieve. Once, in a meeting, an investor looked me straight in the eye and said, 'I don't think women belong in this game.'" Min frowned, her words striking too close to home. Slowly he replied, "I've heard something similar. Not because I'm a woman, but because I'm a single dad. They told me, 'You can't focus on the job when you're busy raising a child.' And just like that, they dismissed me. Never mind how hard I worked." For a moment, silence lingered between them. It wasn't awkward, it was heavy with shared understanding. Lisa's eyes glimmered with empathy. "So, we've both been judged for things that have nothing to do with our talent." Anna, still hugging her teddy bear, suddenly sat up and murmured, "I think my dad is the best in the world. He can do everything. They just don't know it yet." Her words made Min's throat tighten, while Lisa chuckled softly, her eyes glowing with warmth. "See?" Lisa teased gently, though her tone carried truth. "You've got the most loyal fan in the world sitting right beside you. And honestly, I think she's right." In that instant, Min realized this flight wasn't just taking him to another city. It was carrying him toward a turning point in his life, where he no longer felt alone in his fight to prove his worth. Lisa sat quietly for a moment, her eyes fixed on Min as if weighing something. She tapped her fingers lightly on the armrest, then leaned closer, her voice tinged with intrigue. "Min, do you realize? When you talk about your life, I don't see a failure. I see someone seasoned, someone with a grounded perspective and a resilience most people in finance lack." Min blinked, startled, then gave a half laugh. "You're exaggerating. I'm just a single dad drowning in bills and missed opportunities." Lisa shook her head, gaze steady. "No, you have ability. The problem is, you've been playing on the wrong field. People didn't see your value because they didn't want to. But I do." Her words struck something deep inside him. He looked at her and found no pity, no hollow encouragement. Her eyes carried conviction. like someone who recognized true potential. Anna, listening intently, suddenly burst out, "See? I told you! My dad is amazing. And now Miss Lisa thinks so too." Their laughter eased the tension. Min patted his daughter's head, then turned back to Lisa. His voice softened. "Thank you. It's been a long time since anyone said that to me. But why do you believe in me?" Lisa lifted the cup of water from her tray, her smile carrying a quiet mystery. "Maybe because I've learned to tell the difference between those who only talk big and those who can stand firm in a storm. And Min, I think you belong in the second group." The plane shook slightly as it hit turbulence. But inside Min's heart, something shook far more powerfully, a small but burning spark of belief. The turbulence grew stronger, cabin lights flickering before stabilizing. Some passengers gasped, gripping their armrests. Others muttered prayers under their breath. Min quickly wrapped Anna in his arms, his heart pounding, eyes tense. Anna trembled, clutching her teddy bear. "Daddy, I'm scared." Min stroked her hair gently. "It's okay, I'm here. The plane's just bouncing a little, like a slide in the playground." Yet sweat dotted his forehead. Inside, he was just as worried. Beside him, Lisa remained calm, almost steadying. She placed a light hand on Min's arm, her gaze unwavering. "Min, breathe slower. Kids feel what you feel. Trust me, everything's going to be fine." That simple touch sent reassurance coursing through him. He nodded, taking a deep breath. This time, when he looked at Anna, he managed a genuine smile. "See, Daddy and Miss Lisa are both here. We won't leave you alone." Anna glanced at Lisa, eyes still watery. Lisa smiled and held out her hand. "Come on, Anna, hold my hand too. I get scared of the bumps as well." After a brief pause, Anna placed her tiny hand into Lisa's. And so, 3 hands, one large, one small, one soft, clasped tightly together in the trembling sky. In that moment, Min felt it clearly. An invisible thread had just formed. Not merely passengers seated side by side, but something deeper, something he hadn't been searching for, yet had arrived exactly when he needed it most. The plane steadied. The worried murmurs in the cabin faded. Anna sighed in relief, leaning against Min's shoulder, while Lisa still held her hand gently. Min looked at Lisa, their eyes meeting. No words were spoken, but a profound understanding passed between them, stronger than any conversation so far. After the turbulence subsided, the cabin settled back into calm. Passengers exhaled in relief. Min's nerves were still raw, but when he looked down and saw Anna sleeping soundly on his shoulder, her tiny hand still clasping Lisa's, a strange peace washed over him. Lisa gently withdrew her hand, careful not to wake Anna. She smiled at the sight of father and daughter, her eyes softening, so different from the sharp, armored woman she had to be in the business world. Then she turned to Min, her voice low but steady. "Min, have you ever thought? Maybe missing that flight wasn't bad luck, but an opportunity." He raised his brows, surprised. "An opportunity? All I see is the job I lost." Lisa shook her head, her eyes bright. "I don't see it that way. From the way you speak, I can tell. You have a perspective many finance professionals lack. You're realistic, you understand sacrifice, and most of all, you know how to stand firm when the world turns its back. That's the quality any investor would want in a partner." Her words stunned him. They didn't sound like comfort, but conviction. He chuckled softly, tinged with bitterness. "A partner? I couldn't even hold down a junior role at my old firm. Who would want a single dad, always tied up with childcare?" Lisa didn't break her gaze. Her smile turned mysterious. "Maybe I would," Min froze. His heart pounded wildly, as if this single moment marked the beginning of a new path, one he had never imagined. The moment Lisa said, "Maybe I would," Min was left speechless. Part of him wanted to laugh. It sounded ridiculous. A successful professional like her, paying attention to a struggling single dad, barely making ends meet? But another part of him felt his heart racing, as though a door had cracked open, too fragile for him to believe. Lisa seemed to sense his unease and smiled reassuringly. "Don't get me wrong. I'm not speaking lightly. Min, I'm preparing for a major deal. The issue is, the partners I'm meeting are used to fancy presentations, but what they lack is someone with a practical lens, someone who understands risk and human reality. You have that, Min chuckled, shaking his head. And what makes you so sure? I've only told a few stories on this flight. Lisa leaned in, her tone more serious. No, it's the way you analyze, straightforward, grounded, without trying to sound clever. That's rare. Trust me, I've met hundreds in this field, and I can tell who only talks and who truly understands. Her words froze him. It had been so long since anyone recognized the value hidden inside him. Just then, Anna stirred, mumbling in her sleep, "Daddy, don't be sad anymore." Min squeezed her hand gently, his eyes stinging, then turned to Lisa. If you really believe in me, then what exactly is the opportunity you're talking about?" Lisa didn't answer immediately. She took a sip of water, her eyes shimmering under the soft cabin light. Then slowly she said, "Let me explain. Because this flight might not just change my work. It might change your entire life too." Min straightened. His gaze locked on Lisa. Her words lit a spark inside him. Curiosity swirling as the plane glided smoothly through the clouds. Lisa set her glass down, hands folded, her expression intent. "The project I'm preparing is a venture capital fund. They want to invest in startups, but the problem is, most of these founders are dream sellers, painting glossy visions with no real foundation. I need someone who can see past the polish, someone who can tell me what's real opportunity and what's a deadly risk." Min frowned slightly. "And you think I can do that?" Lisa nodded without hesitation. "Min, you've faced failure, loss, sacrifice. That makes you different. You're not blinded by glitter. You see through reality with the eyes of someone who's lived it. That's exactly what I need at this meeting." Min laughed softly, half skeptical. "Sounds like you're recruiting an assistant mid-flight." Lisa tilted her head, lips curving faintly. "You could call it that, but I don't want just any assistant. I want a potential partner. And I believe if you say yes, this could be your way back, not to prove others wrong, but to prove yourself right." His heartbeat quickened. Never had he imagined missing a flight could lead to such an offer. A cautious voice inside whispered, "Is this just a promise in the clouds?" Yet deeper down he wanted to believe. Anna, still asleep against his shoulder, had no idea the conversation unfolding beside her could reshape their future. Min squeezed her tiny hand, then looked Lisa squarely in the eye. "Lisa, I can't promise yet, but tell me more. I need to understand this opportunity." Lisa nodded gently, her eyes gleaming as if she'd been waiting for those exact words all along. Lisa straightened, her eyes glowing as if she had just found the missing piece of a grand plan. Her voice dropped, deliberate and steady. "Tomorrow, I'll be meeting with a group of powerful investors downtown. They're not easy to win over. I've prepared a solid presentation, but what I need is another voice, another perspective. Someone who doesn't speak in polished jargon, but with lived experience. Min, I want you to come with me." Min froze, staring at her in disbelief. "Me? I don't belong in that world anymore. I don't even have a proper suit, let alone a business card to hand out." Lisa smiled, almost challengingly. "Do you really think they care about a suit or a card? They care about truth, and I know when you speak, they'll have no choice but to listen." Min shook his head, turmoil churning inside him. A part of him still carried shame. The image of a flustered single dad at the airport haunted him. Yet deep inside, a spark flickered, lit by this woman's unshakable belief. He glanced at Anna, still fast asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. Squeezing her hand for strength, he turned back to Lisa, his voice trembling but resolute. "If I say yes." "What happens then?" Lisa leaned closer, her gaze piercing. "If you say yes, we won't just walk into that room to convince a few investors. We'll change the way they see things. And maybe, Min, missing your flight today was the beginning of your comeback." The plane jolted gently again, as if punctuating the moment. Min sat motionless, his heart pounding. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But he knew one thing for certain. From this moment on, his life would never be the same. The plane landed in the city at night, lights glittering below like a massive carpet of stars. Min gazed out the window, feeling both anxious and excited. It had been so long since he set foot in a big city, with something more than just the role of a single father. This time, It felt like he was standing on the edge of a new opportunity. Anna rubbed her eyes, still groggy. "Daddy, are we here?" Min nodded, brushing her hair gently. "Yes, sweetheart. This is where something different begins for us." Lisa, ever calm and confident, leaned toward him as the plane taxied to a stop. Half joking, half serious, she said, "Min, tomorrow you're coming with me. I hope you won't back out." Min hesitated. A part of him wanted to retreat, to run from a responsibility that felt too heavy. But when he met Lisa's determined gaze and felt Anna's small hand gripping his, he simply nodded. "I'll go." They left the airport. The city pulsed with life, headlights streaming like rivers of light. Min pulled their suitcase, Anna skipping beside him, while Lisa walked briskly, phone pressed to her ear as she discussed something with her team. Min thought to himself, she's like a storm, powerful, relentless, and somehow that storm has swept me into its current. At the hotel entrance, Lisa handed Min a key card. "You and Anna will stay here tonight. Tomorrow I'll pick you up. Be ready, Min. This meeting isn't just important to me. It could be the turning point of your life." Min held the card, conflicted. He looked up at the towering building glowing against the night sky. Lisa's words echoed in his mind, each syllable sinking deep. "The turning point of your life." He squeezed Anna's hand, taking a long breath. Tomorrow, would he crumble under the piercing eyes of powerful investors? Or would he rise for the first time in years as a man ready to rewrite his destiny? That night, in the luxurious hotel room, Min lay on the bed, wide awake. Anna was fast asleep, hugging her teddy bear and snoring softly. The hum of the air conditioner was steady, but Min's mind was anything but calm. It was a storm. He tossed and turned, thoughts colliding. Tomorrow I'll face who? Powerful investors. And how will they see me? Just a scruffy single dad with no resume, no business card, nothing to prove my worth except a few words I said on a plane. Fear crept in, squeezing his chest. He remembered every rejection, every pitying glance, every mocking smirk. He had once vowed never to let himself be humiliated again, and yet here he was, about to walk straight into a gamble that could crush him. He stepped out onto the balcony, gazing at the city lights glittering below. The sound of car horns echoed faintly, the pulse of life in the streets so different from the stillness inside him. What if I'm just deluding myself? What if Lisa only wants another pawn to dress up her plan? He thought bitterly. But when he turned back inside, his eyes fell on Anna. She slept peacefully, her innocent face glowing with a faint smile. Min sank to his knees beside the bed, taking her tiny hand in his. "No, I can't let fear win. If not for myself, then for her. She deserves a father who stands tall, who dares to try again, who believes he can." In that moment, a strange determination surged within him. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew this. He would walk into that room with his head high, not only because Lisa believed in him, but because Anna needed a strong father. Outside, the night wind blew cold, but in Min's chest, a fire had just been lit. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the hotel window, painting the floor in soft golden hues. Min had been awake long before the alarm rang. He barely slept at all. He studied himself in the bathroom mirror. The only dress shirt he had was freshly ironed, but the collar was frayed, the color faded. He adjusted it over and over, still feeling he didn't look the part. With a bitter chuckle, he thought, "They'll take one look at me and know I don't belong in their world anymore." But then he caught Anna's gaze. She sat on the bed, hair messy, eyes half closed with sleep, yet smiling brightly. "Daddy, you look great, like a superhero going to do something big." Her words worked like magic. Min inhaled deeply, straightened his collar one last time. "All right then, I'll try to be a superhero again." A knock on the door interrupted him. Lisa stood there in a navy suit, hair neatly tied, face radiant but eyes sharp. She scanned Min up and down, then smiled. "You look ready. Trust me, you don't need an expensive suit to make an impression." Min nodded, his heart racing. He grabbed his worn-out briefcase with a few scribbled notes, the only preparation he could manage overnight, and took Anna's hand. Lisa bent down, stroking the little girl's hair. "Anna, Today your dad is helping me with something very important. You'll have to cheer him on. Anna gave a big thumbs up. I'm his #1 fan. The three of them left the hotel. The city buzzed with morning traffic, horns blaring, people rushing in every direction. Min felt like an outsider in the chaos, yet also like a warrior on the verge of battle. In the car, Lisa flipped through her final documents, eyes glued to the numbers. Min clenched his fists, his pulse quickening. In just minutes, he would step into a room where the piercing eyes of wealthy investors would judge him. This is the moment. Time to prove, not just to them, but to myself, that I can still stand tall. The glass doors of the boardroom swung open, hinges creaking into a heavy silence. Min followed Lisa, clutching his worn briefcase, sweat slicking his palms. The room reeked of power. A long, polished table, nearly a dozen sharply dressed men and women seated around it, their eyes sharp, unforgiving. As Lisa entered, several brows furrowed. An older man with silver hair and a black suit glanced at his watch, his voice dry as dust. Lisa, you've got 30 minutes. I hope this time you've brought more than just promises. Lisa's confident smile didn't waver as she nodded politely, but Min could feel the hostility dripping beneath their tone. It was the same disdain he had once endured, judged not by skill, but by circumstance. He scanned the room, heartbeat racing. His frayed shirt collar, his battered briefcase, they made him feel utterly out of place among these people who radiated wealth and dominance. A voice in his head whispered, "You don't belong here." Lisa stepped to the front, opened her laptop, and began her pitch. Her voice was steady, clear, every number and chart sharp and precise. Min couldn't help but admire her. She truly knew how to command the stage. Then suddenly, as if on cue, a young investor with a smug expression cut in. "Sounds nice. But you're still just a consultant. Why should your words carry any weight? Who's to say this isn't just another painted dream?" The room went still. Lisa pressed her lips together, her eyes narrowing briefly. Then she turned, her gaze locking on Min. That look said everything without a word. "This is your moment." Min's chest tightened. He knew. This was the instant that would decide everything. Not just for Lisa, but for himself. The air in the boardroom was so thick Min could hear nothing but his own heartbeat. All eyes turned to him, a stranger in a faded shirt, hands resting nervously on a battered briefcase. For a fleeting moment, he wanted to stand, apologize, and leave. "This isn't your place. You don't belong here." The voice inside screamed. But then he remembered Anna's smile, the way she had declared with certainty, "Daddy is a superhero," and Lisa's unwavering gaze beside him. That gave him strength. Min drew a deep breath and rose to his feet. No laptop, no glossy slides, just his voice, plain but steady. You ask why Lisa's words should carry weight? Because she's not just presenting an idea. She's presenting truth. And if you want proof, then hear it from someone who's lived on the edge of failure and survival, me. Some investors frowned, others leaned in. Min pressed on, firmer now. "I've worked in finance. I've seen dozens of startups collapse, not because their ideas were bad, but because they weren't ready for reality. Costs ballooned, customers left, investors pulled out. I lived through it. I lost my career to it. But that's exactly why I know the difference between numbers dressed up for show and plans that can actually work." He paused, locking eyes with the smug young investor. "You don't need another rosy dream. You need someone who'll tell you straight where the risks lie and where the real opportunities are." "That's why I'm here." The room fell silent. Then an older investor with graying hair leaned forward, stroking his chin. Interesting. Go on." Lisa glanced at Min, the corner of her lips curving into a subtle smile. For the first time, her eyes held genuine recognition. Not of a struggling single dad who happened to sit beside her, but of a true partner. Min swallowed hard, feeling the weight of every gaze on him. But instead of trembling, he felt a strange resolve ignite inside. Taking a steady breath, he continued, "You're used to hearing plans dressed up with fancy words. Revenue skyrocketing, market dominance in record time, profits exploding. But reality? Most collapse within a year or two, leaving behind mountains of debt." He paused, letting his eyes sweep across the table. I know because I was there. I once believed in those glittering numbers on slides, until I watched my company fall into ruin. And I swore I'd never make that mistake again. The young investor who had mocked Lisa earlier sneered. Sounds more like the bitterness of a failure than the wisdom of an expert. The room tensed. Min met his gaze squarely, voice calm but firm. You're right, I did fail. But that failure taught me lessons no MBA ever could. Failure taught me how to spot illusions from real foundations. You can choose to hear another polished dream, or you can hear the raw truth from someone who paid for it with his career. That's your choice, silence stretched. Then, from the far end of the table, a middle-aged man in a blue suit tapped his fingers on the desk. He has a point. We need someone who can see the risks, not just paint everything in pink. Several heads nodded. The atmosphere shifted, no longer sheer skepticism, but curiosity, tinged with respect. Lisa smiled, her voice ringing strong. That is exactly why I wanted Min here today. Not to sell dreams, but to remind us to face reality. And if a plan can withstand his scrutiny, then it's a plan worth investing in. Min clenched his hand, heart pounding. He had never imagined he could make a room full of power players listen. But now he knew. He had finally stepped out of the shadow of failure. The boardroom was strung tight like a violin string. Investors whispered to one another, their eyes shifting, not just skeptical now, but curious. Lisa subtly stepped back, nodding toward Min, a silent signal. Go on? Min drew a deep breath, fixing his gaze on the growth projections displayed on the screen. Slowly, he said, looking at these numbers, anyone would be impressed. Positive cash flow, high margins, rapid market expansion. But I want to ask one thing. In the worst-case scenario, how long can this plan survive? The question sliced through the silence like a blade. The room froze. Some investors exchanged glances, some frowned, others nodded ever so slightly. Min pressed on, his voice steady. You've seen countless rosy forecasts. But startups don't die for lack of dreams. They die because they're not prepared for nightmares. If you don't factor in customers walking away, capital drying up, or the market turning cold, then these numbers are nothing but illusions. He paused. Eyes sharp. If you want this project to truly succeed, start with one question. How do we survive when everything goes wrong? Only with that answer does the dream become worth investing in. Silence. Then, suddenly, applause broke out. Not from Lisa, but from one of the oldest investors at the table. Rising to his feet, his deep voice carried weight. Finally, someone dares to say what we too often forget. Not painting the skies pink, but preparing for the storm. He's right. The eyes on Min had shifted. No longer skeptical, but respectful. Lisa smiled, pride glinting in her gaze. Inside Min, a fire roared to life. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like an outsider. He was exactly where he belonged. The boardroom had shifted completely. Gone were the sneers and raised brows. Now pens scratched across notepads, eyes fixed on Min with attention. He still stood with one hand on his battered briefcase, but his stance was steadier, stronger. At the center of the table sat a man who clearly commanded the room. Square-jawed, his sharp gaze seemed to pierce through thoughts themselves. After a long pause, he tapped his pen lightly against the table. Min, isn't it? I'll admit, I'm surprised by what you've said. But I have a blunt question for you. The room held its breath. Min nodded, heart pounding. Go ahead. The man tilted his head, voice low and steady. You talk well about risk, about failure, about preparing for the worst. But say we hand you and Lisa tens of millions of dollars. What would you do differently to protect it? In short, why should we trust someone who has already failed? The question cut sharp as a blade. Several investors nodded, their eyes now trained on Min, waiting. For a moment, Min felt cornered. Memories of losses, sneers, humiliations all came rushing back. But then he remembered last night, holding Anna's hand, swearing he wouldn't let her see her father crumble again. He raised his head, his voice firm. Yes, I failed. But failure taught me to respect money, to treat it as lifeblood. If entrusted with your capital, I wouldn't inflate numbers to look good. I'd do what most shy away from, plan for every worst-case scenario. Strip away illusions, and make sure every dollar spent has a path to return. He paused, locking eyes with the man at the head of the table. You can trust someone who only boasts of victories. Or you can trust someone who's fallen hard but stood up and refuses to repeat the same mistakes. I am the latter. The room fell silent. The central figure stopped tapping his pen. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, for the first time, showing genuine intrigue. Lisa's eyes shone with pride. And in that moment, Min knew he was no longer an outsider. He was fighting at last for a rightful place at the table. The boardroom was silent after Min's words, so still that the ticking of the wall clock seemed deafening. Then, like an undercurrent breaking loose, murmurs rippled through the room. An older investor with silver hair and gold-rimmed glasses tapped the table sharply. Touching speech, but we don't invest on feelings. Failure is failure. No matter what lessons you claim to have learned, I see no reason to entrust tens of millions to someone who's already lost. Immediately, a woman in a crimson suit shot back, her voice cutting. No, it's because he's failed that he's worth trusting. He's seen the cracks others overlook. I, for one, want to hear more from him. The room stirred with whispers. Some nodded in agreement, others frowned in dissent. The atmosphere felt like a courtroom, with Min as the man on trial. Lisa stayed composed, her eyes sharp. She interjected firmly. Ladies and gentlemen, if we keep choosing those who only promise roses, we'll keep reaping collapses. Min may not wear a $3,000 suit or carry glossy business cards, but he brings something rarer: lived experience and honesty. The chairman, the man at the center, remained silent, watching every word and reaction. At last he spoke slowly. It seems we're divided. Some say too risky, others see value in this candor. I want to hear from you directly, Min. If chosen, where would you begin to prove you're worth the trust? Once again, all eyes fell on Min. His heart pounded, but this time it wasn't fear. It was challenge. He felt ready. This was the moment to turn fragile belief into undeniable proof. Min rose, drawing in a deep breath as though gathering every ounce of courage left in him. He scanned the table, meeting stern, cold, and curious eyes alike. Then he spoke, slow, deliberate, but resolute. If chosen, I wouldn't start by adding more curves to the growth chart. I'd start by finding the project's breaking point, the maximum stress it can withstand before it collapses. The room stirred. Some frowned, others tilted their heads, clearly unaccustomed to hearing such an answer. He pressed on, his voice firmer. We always ask, what's the maximum profit? But the more important question is, how much loss can we survive and still stand? If we define that threshold, every investment decision becomes far safer. He pulled a few scribbled pages from his battered briefcase, handwritten numbers, underlined figures, red notes. He slid them across the table toward the nearest investor. This is the worst-case scenario I sketched out overnight. I factored in customer drop-off, delayed cash flow, sudden cost spikes. And the project still has a survival path, if we adjust our expectations from the beginning. Silence settled. The chairman lifted a page, his brow arching as he scanned. The woman in the red suit leaned closer, her eyes brightening at the clarity of the logic. Min lifted his head, voice low but steady. I don't promise rosy dreams. I promise to show the safest path to make the dream real. If you want someone who tells you only what you want to hear, that's not me. But if you want someone who will protect every dollar as if it were his own blood, I'm here. This silence was different, no longer skeptical, but heavy with real consideration. Lisa smiled faintly, her eyes glowing with pride. She knew Min had struck the meeting's nerve, not with glittering words, but with raw truth. The boardroom erupted the moment Min finished speaking. Voices clashed, overlapping in heated debate. A young investor slammed his hand on the table. Sounds nice, but we don't pay millions to hear a single dad lecture us on failure. This is business, not a life coaching seminar. Immediately, the woman in the red suit fired back. He's not just telling stories. He's giving us the raw perspective we desperately need. Do you know how many times we've lost money chasing sugar-coated reports? People like Min show us whether a project can actually survive. Some investors nodded, others shook their heads. The tension rose to a breaking point, the air thick enough to choke on. Lisa stood beside Min, her eyes cold and sharp. She said nothing, letting the spotlight remain on him. It was clear. This was the decisive moment. Either he earned their trust, or everything collapsed. The chairman raised his hand. Silence swept the room. His voice was deep, deliberate. We are divided. Half of us see this as unacceptable risk. The other half sees value in his candor. Min, I'll ask you one more thing. If tomorrow this company faced a crisis, what would be your very first move? The room held its breath. Lisa glanced at Min, as if handing him the final key to turn the tide. Min clenched his fist, Anna's voice echoing in his mind. Daddy is a superhero. He knew this answer would decide everything. Not just for Lisa, but for himself and his daughter. Min drew in a long breath. The silence was so heavy he could hear his own heartbeat pounding. Then he raised his head, meeting the chairman's gaze, his voice firm. If tomorrow this company faced a crisis, my first move wouldn't be to pour in more money or paint the numbers prettier. I'd do the simplest, most critical thing: cut the bleeding immediately to keep the company alive. Several investors arched their brows. Min pressed on, voice steady and strong. In crisis, survival doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to the one who sacrifices fastest. I'd slash every unnecessary expense, keep only the core that sustains life. Then I'd focus on one thing: cash flow. Not profit, not growth, cash flow to stay alive. Because only when you survive do you get the chance to thrive again. He paused, eyes sweeping the room. I once lost everything because I didn't cut soon enough. I will never let myself, or any company I'm part of, make that mistake again. The room went still. Then the chairman leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with intrigue. He tapped his pen on the table and said, "Impressive. Finally, someone bold enough to say what most CEOs keep hidden. I like this candor." Other investors began to nod, even exchange quick, thoughtful glances. The contempt from earlier was gone, replaced by genuine consideration. Lisa's smile was faint but radiant, her eyes shimmering with pride. She knew this moment was the turning point, not just for the meeting, but for Min himself. Inside Min, a storm of emotions surged. He didn't yet know what verdict would be delivered, but one thing was certain. For the first time in years, he had stood tall, with all his belief, not just for himself, but for his daughter. The boardroom felt like a ticking time bomb. After Min's blunt answer, the investors erupted into heated debate. A young investor, still smug, crossed his arms and said loudly, "Impressive words. But I didn't come here for a crisis management lecture. We need someone who grows capital, not someone who's only good at surviving." Immediately, the woman in the red suit slammed her pen on the table, her voice sharp. "He is exactly who we need. Everyone can paint visions of riches, but who dares to speak about the storm? If a project can survive Min's scrutiny, then that is a project worth investing in." Some investors nodded firmly, others frowned and shook their heads. The clash of opinions crashed through the room like opposing waves. Lisa remained silent, observing. She let the storm unfold, only glancing at Min from time to time with eyes that seemed to say, "You've done more than enough." "Now we wait for their choice." The chairman raised his hand and silence fell instantly. He looked at Min, then at Lisa, then swept his gaze across the table. His voice dropped, heavy with weight. "We stand at a crossroads. Some see Min as a risk, a man who has failed. Others see him as a rare asset, someone who speaks the truth others ignore. I want each member of this board to state their stance before we make our final decision." The room went dead quiet. One by one, investors began to speak. Some dismissed him outright, others praised him, while a few hesitated. Each word landed like a hammer blow on Min's chest. He clenched his fist, his heartbeat pounding like war drums. Beside him, Lisa smiled faintly, her eyes glinting. She knew this decision would change everything, not only for her, but for the man sitting next to her. The boardroom was suffocating, every tap of a pen echoing like a drumbeat. One by one, the investors gave their verdicts. A balding man spoke curtly, I'm against it. We cannot let emotions sway a decision worth tens of millions. A man who has failed doesn't deserve a seat at this table. Immediately, the woman in the red suit shot back firmly, I'm in favor. Precisely because he's failed, he has the experience to spot the cracks we usually overlook. I want to see him involved. Another investor, looking weary, flipped through the documents quickly before muttering, I remain undecided. But I'll admit, Min's perspective has made me think harder than any pitch I've heard before. Voices of support and reject rang out in turn, clashing like a miniature war. Min sat frozen, his fists clenched white. He didn't dare look at anyone, his eyes fixed on the table. Yet inside, every word landed like a hammer blow to his chest. Lisa, by contrast, stood tall. Her eyes blazed brighter, her confidence only growing. Now and then she glanced at Min, her gaze carrying reassurance. Trust me. You've done your part. At last, all eyes turned to the chairman. He laid his pen on the table, fingers interlaced, his face unreadable. The room held its breath. Enough, he said, his voice firm. I've heard both sides. Now, it's time we make our final decision. The tension was unbearable. Min could feel his heartbeat echoing through the silence. This was the moment of truth, chosen or cast aside. The chairman leaned back, his sharp eyes sweeping the room. He let the silence stretch, testing everyone's patience. Min felt as though his heart might burst out of his chest. Finally, the chairman placed both hands on the table, his voice ringing clear and decisive. We don't need more dreamers. We need someone who dares to face reality, even when it's uncomfortable. And today, I heard that from Min. The room erupted. Some investors looked stunned. Others immediately protested. You can't be serious. Entrusting millions to a man who failed? But the chairman raised his hand, silencing them. Failure is not the danger. The true danger is someone who's never failed but thinks they're invincible. I choose Min, and I will vote in favor of this project on the condition that he joins it. Murmurs exploded. Some reluctantly nodded, others stayed quiet, but the balance had tipped. The majority leaned in favor. Lisa turned to Min, her lips curving into a victorious smile. Her eyes shone with pride, and something else, a glimmer that suggested she had just witnessed the rebirth of a man. Min sat stunned, hardly believing what had just happened. From a missed flight, from sitting beside a stranger, to this moment, being recognized by a board of powerful investors. His chest tightened, his eyes stung. Anna, oblivious to the stakes, squealed with delight at her father's smile. See? I told you, Daddy's a superhero. Laughter rippled through the room. The tension dissolved, replaced by something lighter, almost warm, and in that moment, Min knew. Missing that flight wasn't misfortune. It was destiny's gift.